one question, if anybody has one. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany. Our next presenter is with the City of Amarillo. He's the Chief Information Officer, Rich Gagmon. Currently up for the City of Amarillo, Rich is a 30-year IT veteran with a deep background in IT leadership and security architecture. Before serving at the city, Rich was the Vice President of Engineering for Palo Alto Networks, the largest cybersecurity company in the world. Previously, Rich was the Global Vice President of Engineering for F5 Networks, one of the leading data center solution providers, as well as the IT Director for GameStop. Please join me in welcoming Rich.
All right, I got to set my timer up. Me only speaking 30 minutes, I got to have a timer. All right. All right, so my name is Rich Gagmon. I've sat through literally thousands of security briefings with recommendations, and I've developed two very specific pet peeves out of that. The first is fear-mongering has become a sales strategy for every security vendor. That is their primary go-to, is to generate fear. I'm going to give you some information today, some data, and that's not the goal of it, right? I want to give you a view of what cybersecurity looks like. In my heart of hearts, I'm an engineer. So as an engineer, I like to know the reality of a situation, and then I will engineer a reasonable solution to deal with those realities, and that's the spirit in which I'm going to share this data. The second is, in every one of those presentations, recommendations are presented as facts. And recommendation is just a really fancy word for opinion. So as we close this out, and I'm giving some recommendations, really they're my opinion, formed from my time in the private sector, working with control systems, primarily in transportation and retail, and then also as the lead of engineering for the security company I worked for. I had the privilege of working with thousands of companies around the world and gathering their best practices, but they are nonetheless my opinion. So in looking at the agenda today, what I really want to cover in the 30 minutes, I tried to really dial into what I hope will be most useful to you today. I'm going to cover some general cybersecurity trends, and then I really want to address the IT world versus the control system world, because they're not the same. I've sat in many rooms with control system folks and with IT folks, cybersecurity folks, if you will. They don't speak the same language. They have different priorities, and you have to look at them differently. And then I'm going to make some very simple, practical recommendations. So we're going to start here. You're going to walk out of the room smarter about cybersecurity than 99% of the world. What you're looking at right now is what we call the attack kill chain. These are the 6 things that an attacker must accomplish in order to complete a successful attack. Step 1 is I have to breach the perimeter. What does that mean? In the old days, that meant I had to get into your network, I had to breach your firewall, but what's the perimeter today? If I'm sitting at Starbucks on my laptop, now the perimeter is the antivirus software and the firewall on my laptop. I'm trying to breach that with the goal, usually, of dropping a very small file on your laptop. Once I get that file successfully on your PC, all that is a simple downloader. That downloader is going to go to the internet and download the bad code, the malware, the viruses, etc. Once those install, that malware will then reach out to a command and control server. You can think of it as like the main control screen in a plant, right? This is the control center for malware. And it's going to say, hey, I'm here, take advantage of me. So once that malware is established, the very next thing an attacker will do, if I've gotten into one PC at the City of Amarillo, I'm going to want to spread and get into many PCs. And I do that for 2 reasons. I do it first because I might get kicked off that PC. Maybe they'll discover that it's infected, and then I get booted out of the network. But I also do that because I'm looking for a way into the data center. I'm trying to get the right credentials, get on the right person's equipment that has the authority to get into the data center, because that's where the gold is. Next move is into the data center. I do the same thing. Now I'm in the data center. I'm going to spread laterally. I'm going to look on every server until I find the intellectual property, the credit card numbers, whatever's going to get me paid. And then the last step is I'm going to pull that data out of the network. Now the beautiful thing as a cybersecurity guy is he's got to do all of those. I have to stop him once. I don't have to stop one of those things and data didn't leave the network and I've succeeded in winning. So here's some assumptions as a cybersecurity guy that I always start with. On the IT side of the house, I always assume all software is vulnerable. I had a guy the other day tell me, yeah, but someday AI is going to write software. And he's probably right. We're going to have artificial intelligence writing software, and then the bad guys are going to have artificial intelligence breaking software. Nothing is 100% secure. It never will be. So I have to look at my network like a kindergarten class. Somebody's sick. Somebody's always going to be sick. I always work from the assumption that someone's sick and therefore the corporate network is dirty. So I attack every step of this kill chain. I have firewalls that are next generation firewalls on the edge that are looking for viruses coming in, that are trying to protect me from bad things. I've got antivirus on my laptop. I don't let people actually talk to, their PCs don't talk to each other. Betty in accounting's PC has no reason to talk to Alice's PC. She needs to talk to a printer and a server, so they can't spread laterally. I've separated my data center from my users, so I'm looking at traffic coming from the users into the data center to stop it there, and I'm watching traffic go between servers. They don't generally need to talk to each other unless there's a connection there. Now, this has all changed, right? The environment had changed. Back in the early days, security was relatively simple. Somebody came in, I connected them to a desktop, I plugged them into my network. We had one connection out to the internet, and all I really had to do was watch stuff coming in from the internet and stop the bad stuff. That was it. And then the world started changing, particularly through the 90s, right, and up into the 2000s. Now I don't just hook someone up to my network. I give them a desktop. They want to do the same thing on their laptop and their tablet and their phone, from Starbucks, from home, on vacation in Mexico. I had to open up my whole environment, and now my requirements changed. Now I can't just block what's bad. I need to look at everything coming in. I need to be able to identify it. So if it's a PDF or a Word doc, I need to know, is that good? Let it through. Is it bad? Drop it. And if I don't know, I need to know quickly. How do I determine the unknown and make a decision on that? Well, these changes happened fast, but the security sector didn't catch up with it. There was a huge lag, and a lot of us in the space were struggling with how do we keep up with these changes? How do we keep up with mobility? How do we keep ourselves protected? And what it really did, that lag, they did some things like they added little bolt-on products, like they gave us something to scan our email, and they might give us something to protect a website. But it created a massive market, and in about a decade, hacking went from nerds playing jokes on each other to a multi-trillion-dollar industry. And it's really these bottom guys, the organized crime. Oh, I didn't go. Oh, there we go. It's really these bottom-level guys, the organized crime side that drove cybercrime forward the fastest, and they did so because they automated and they commercialized it. Right? In the old days, being a hacker was hard. You had to be a really good programmer. You had to understand programming and networking and firewalls and what applications you were hacking. You had to know all of that because you did it yourself. Today, I can go on the web, and for $1, I can buy a social security number, or for $150, I can have a new virus made. In fact, I don't demo it anymore because I have to go to websites I'm not comfortable going to as a city employee, but I was as a security researcher. The Russians have this down to an art. They have an entire management interface where you can log in, and for a small sum of money, I can make new malware that isn't on any of the antivirus yet. I can deploy it, and then when I infect computers, I can manage those all from the same interface. And oh, by the way, it'll even take that malware I made and run it against every major antivirus platform that's out there. So it knows when it gets identified and when there's a signature. And when that happens, it'll deploy new malware to all the infected devices and uninstall the malware that has been detected so that you won't be given away in the customer that you've compromised. And what blew me away about all of this is on the top right corner of the interface is a Get Help Now button. They have 24/7 support. If you get stuck, you just click the button, a chat window opens, you can actually turn that into a voice call, and you can work out your hacking problem right there with 24/7 support. So it's easy. They made it easy. You don't have to be an expert to be a bad actor anymore. You just pay a few Bitcoins and you're in the business. The good news is vendors started catching up with that. And what they realized is if the enemy is going to be automated, we have to be automated. So the approach that they took is most vendors, what they do is they call it next generation. That's just marketing speak. Basically, they've crowdsourced it. So they might have a firewall at the edge of the network that all the traffic comes through. And let's say a PDF comes through that firewall. They will look at that and look at the signature of that PDF and say, hey, is that a good file? Is that a bad file? Or is it unknown? If it's good, I'll let it through. If it's bad, I'll drop it. But if I don't know, I ship that off to their data center. They actually open that file and they run it. And now they know if it's good or bad, and they generate a signature to identify it as bad, and they send it to every firewall of their customers in the world. So the beauty of that approach is right now in China, at a manufacturing plant, they could be discovering a new virus, and in 5 minutes, I'm going to have that protection here at the city of Amarillo. Right? So they've gotten automated about their approach. What I'm giving you here is one vendor's view. This is one of those threat clouds, the data centers where they open these files to identify them. And this is, to be transparent, it's a little older data. It's a little older than a year. They don't send that stuff to me anymore. They've actually monetized it. So now they're selling this information to customers so they don't make it publicly available. But it's still going to give you the idea. This vendor has about 40,000 connected firewalls around the world, right, that are looking that are filtering files coming in, filtering traffic coming in. They get about 2.2 million files per day at the high point, and they run about 700,000 a day on the weekend. So every day they're looking at, on the high water mark, somewhere around 2 million files every day. Is this good or bad? Out of those, every 3 seconds they're finding a new piece of malware, a new virus that isn't on anybody's radar, that doesn't have a signature. So every 3 seconds there's new malware. If you break those down, about 2/3 of those files are PDFs. They're not very toxic, which means of the files they're scanning, very few of them actually have malware in them. Second is flash. Those are significantly more toxic, but only about 6% of the files make up 90% of the malware, and those are executable in DLLs. And the lesson there is, if you get an executable or a link to a DLL, be very cautious about it because there's a very good chance it's malware. Now, this one I actually found particularly interesting. This is the amount of malware found per day, and if you go from left to right, you're really looking at April to April. And what I see here is a business cycle. Right there in the middle, you see the very highest peak. That on that day, right back before that is Thanksgiving week. So everybody in the cybercrime industry takes Thanksgiving off just like we do. And then you see that giant jump in the middle to the highest peak. That is the day before Black Friday. That starts the afternoon before Black Friday, and it stays really high, and then the day it drops off is January 1st. So they party just like everybody else on New Year's Eve, and then they're out. But at its peak, they were finding 71,000 pieces of malware on a day, right? That's been trending up about 50% year over year, and it's generating about 312 new antivirus signatures every 15 minutes. So it's fast, right? It's fast-paced. As far as command and control, the consoles that are controlling all of this, the other piece of that, when they explode a piece of malware, they actually identify, okay, who's it trying to talk to on the internet? Who is the command and control? Let's block those too. They're blocking on average 460 command and control sites every 30 minutes. Now, why did I just tell you all that? Maybe it's interesting, maybe it's not, but I told you all that because the bad actors out there, the cyber criminals, their strategy is one of really rapid automated change. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to outpace us. So we may find, yeah, we found your command and control sites. We knocked out 460. They've already generated 10 more, right? It is a race constantly. Our approach, the approach on the IT side of the house is exactly that, right? We have to be automated and have an approach of an aggressive defense posture change. We're constantly trying to change ahead of the bad guys. It's a race. So in the old days, we might have done security patches once a month, and then it was once a week, and now I get them every 5 minutes, and some of them are real time. And it's getting worse. That rate of change is going to get even faster. Now I went to Dell's roadmap presentation a couple of weeks ago, and now even networking itself, when one computer wants to talk to another, they want to automatically build a network so that they can talk and then tear that network down so it doesn't exist anymore. So it's that change in the environment, in an IT environment, is very rapid, very fast. We accept it on the IT side of the house, but that is not the control system world. And there's a huge disconnect there when you're talking to a person with an IT or a cybersecurity background. They generally come from that side of the planet. And if you look at the contrasting priorities, if you look at the IT side of the house, when we look at security, we're concerned about the integrity of our systems and confidentiality. I want to be sure that the people that are looking at the data are only the people that need to see it and no one else. In a control system, the primary concern I have is safety and reliability. I want it to be safe, and I want it to be reliable. The objective of the bad guys is different. When I'm hacking in the IT space, it's really about data theft. I want to get intellectual property. I want to get something I can make money on. If I'm hacking in a control system, it's about sabotage. The exposure, right? In the IT world, the big area of exposure is the internet. But I've already told you, IT guys, cybersecurity guys, they consider the corporate network dirty. So for a control system, the real area of exposure is, hopefully you're not connected to the internet, it's the corporate network, right? We know that's dirty. And even the life cycle. In IT, I'll have new infrastructure every 5 to 7 years. It's changing that quickly. I'm in the middle of a project right now replacing every switch in the entire data center for the city of Amarillo. In 7 years, I'll be doing the exact same thing. In a control system, you got decades. I mean, that gear is good for 10 to 20 years and often outlasts the manufacturer that it was bought from. So the approaches are completely different. In IT, it's aggressive change. In a huge control system, often security is an aspect of safety, right? There's a rigid, very structured engineering change control process around it. So IT and control networks are managed differently, and security controls are actually managed differently. So when I look at a control system, there's a different set of assumptions that I look at. I assume, just like I did on the IT side, that the corporate network is dirty, right? I'm going to treat the corporate network almost like IT treats the internet. And I assume that control systems are, by comparison, they're soft as compared to an IT system. Most of the traffic's not encrypted. There's a lot of debate in the industry right now as to whether or not it should be, but right now it's not. Security updates they're fairly rare to find security updates up to date. Antivirus is inconsistent. If it's installed, it's usually not up to date. Control systems are just not hardened like IT. And yet, the good point here, and the great attribute that we can work with is the environment is relatively stable. Once you get a control system in place, it generally doesn't change very much, right? Once it's functioning, you don't fix what ain't broke, right? Now, I've been in the room, like as I said, on many occasions with control system guys and IT guys, both before and after a breach. And this is the thing IT guys launch from the start. They will immediately start harping on the fact that security patches aren't being done, that AV isn't updated. But there's a couple of things that they don't understand. In the IT world, we've sort of accepted the fact that an update is a change in code. It's a change in the way the program works, and sometimes those changes are massive. It's not uncommon in IT to put out an update and then know the next day something's going to break, right? IT is willing to absorb that level of outage. Oh, thank you. No. Yeah, that was good. So you guys didn't see this at all? Was this up? Did this come up? Okay. Oh my gosh, it was going. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna back up just a second. This is the what I was talking about, the malware discovered per day. I'm not gonna go through the whole thing, but I wanted to see the spike at Black Friday, and then you can actually see after that giant spike, it'll drop off at the first. There we go. All right. So updates in IT, we sort of accept that we may take some outage to do the update. For us, the risk is worth it because it's more dangerous not to patch and let a very dangerous virus get through the environment. We'll suffer even greater downtime. In a control system environment, that's not usually the case. The testing that would have to go in place to vet out these updates is often not worth the exposure that it also causes to get the updates, because in order to get them, you've got to open yourself either to a corporate update server or, heaven forbid, to the internet to be getting the updates. But on the flip side of that, ICS products are vulnerable. Researchers are estimating about 100,000 buffer overflow vulnerabilities alone in current control system products, and that's one kind of attack. That's not all of them. The vendors are addressing it, but they're several years behind, and frankly, part of that is because the hardware usefulness is so long. I haven't yet, and I won't say always, because always is definitive, but every site I've been to has had older equipment in it, and some of it that just wouldn't even support antivirus. So there's some low-hanging fruit that we can attack. The first thing is really enhancing safety systems. The first thing I look at is the safety and protection systems. If I can, how do I secure those from other systems? How do I secure those from control? Because by doing that, I'm protecting the same system that no matter what, if someone comes in and takes control, I want the safety systems working so that if I hit an unsafe condition, they can actually trigger a shutdown or return to safe. It's not a cure-all by any means, but it does help move from a risk from safety risk to reliability risk. And of course, enhancing physical security. We usually roll through and make sure that all network ports that are open are locked down, and if something's plugged into it, we'll hard code it to the device plugged into it. We also usually turn down, we forbid software from running off of like USB from removable media ports without an override. So you don't do it on accident. It's forcing the user to make a decision. Yes, I plugged in a USB. Yes, I really did want to run this. And lastly, of course, just ensuring that all of the controlled network is within a physically secured area. Now, here's where the rubber meets the road. The beauty of a control system is that it is relatively static, and that means that an IT guy needs to reverse his thinking a little bit. In an IT world, a PC might do, we have 300 applications we run at the city. So a person in accounting on a computing device today may use these 5 applications, and Tuesday may use a different 5 applications, and Wednesday may use a combination of them. It's constantly changing. So we really have to allow all those processes to run and try to identify when an outside malware process starts. In a control system, you can take the opposite approach. Typically, compute in a control system does 3 processes all the time, over and over and over again, and I know what they are, and I know what libraries they use. So I do that in reverse, and I tell the compute, these are the processes you're allowed to run, and no others. Now I'm using AV in a little different way, but I don't have to go get updates. I don't have any administration that's involved unless there's a change. And if I get an alert, I know one of 3 things has happened. Something's broken, something's misconfigured, or software or a person is misbehaving. And I want to know all 3 of those things, right? And there's no signatures, right? The other beauty of that is it will automatically stop a brand new, what we call a 0-day attack, a 0-day malware, without even having a signature, because it will stop that process. The other good news on that front is security vendors are finally catching up. Now, this is just one. This is one next generation firewall vendor. They're starting to understand the language or the protocols of control systems. 18 months ago, this vendor had one. They understood Modbus. That's one language of a control system. Now they have multiple. And not only do they understand the language, they understand the functions. So they know if it's Modbus write single coil command to a device. They know what the individual functions are. And what that actually lets us do, it enables a whole different approach. You can actually expand that whitelisting approach from not just the individual compute, but the systems themselves. So not only do we know what processes a particular piece of compute is going to do in a control system, we actually know that this device is going to communicate with this device in Modbus, and these are the functions that it's going to send. So in that firewall, I can create what's called security zones. Security zones are nothing more than a collection of devices or networks, and then I actually, between zones, anytime I move between zones, I can enforce rules. So just as a high-level example here, I can take the historian, and I can create a replica historian over in the corporate network. And on the firewall, I can say, I'm only going to allow historian traffic, and I'm only going to allow it from my plant network into corporate. But I'm not going to allow anything back. So I've got a replica out there that I can access off of tablets and mobile, and I can do all of the monitoring that I want to do, but I've not exposed the plant network. Within the plant, I can take a similar approach where I could have a control security zone, and then I can isolate my safety and protection, and I know which devices need to speak to each other and which commands they need to do, and I set those rules. I say this device can use Modbus to send these functions to this device and nothing else. So if there is malware on the system or there is someone misbehaving, I'm going to know that immediately. And if I get an alert, it's no different than if I get an alert using the same example in replace of AV. If I get an alert, I know something is broken, something is misconfigured, or I have software or people misbehaving. So you really start to get your own little threat detection network with a simple configuration, and it puts you in a position where if you do need outside access, it's flexible. It's easy to turn that on and off, so you could let a vendor in for a period of time. You can expand this. It's actually very simple to maintain. So to close out, fact, not fear. There's been several articles that have come out this year about incidents where the community was certain that it was related. Somehow, it was related to cybercrime or malware, only to find out that it wasn't. It was many other factors. So don't get caught up in the fear. There are reasonable solutions to deal with the threat that we have today. Second, IT and ICS, IT and control systems are not the same. If you're working with cybersecurity professionals or IT folks, you may have to help them speak your language.